Hello, my name's Emma Beer and this is my studio. Do you think this is a good one?
Yeah.
This is a painting that I recently finished, which I'm going to talk about, in particular how I made the painting. So I'm going to talk through all the different layers that constitute the painting. So first of all is a blue glaze. So the blue that I'm using is a phthalo blue, which started off as a glaze in the ground, and as you can see on the side of the painting, it references that glaze. Then second of all, after 2 or 3 coats of that blue glaze, I then had mapped out this rectangle in the center of the painting with a white glaze, which consisted of 2 or 3 layers. And when I say glaze, it's a mix that I've used, which is a glazing medium, acrylic glazing medium, which I then mix up with the paint itself, and it's usually about a 70-30 ratio, so 70% medium, 30% acrylic paint. So you can see it's quite fluid in its mixture. And then again with the white, so the white rectangular glaze went over the top, and the first layer was quite gestural, and then once I start to map out the territories or the areas, they become more controlled. So what I've done here is I've applied the paint or the glaze and then taken a dry brush without any paint on it, and then I've removed that paint. So I'm creating a conscious gesture or direction of the brush stroke. And then I repeat that again, but in the opposite direction. So I've got this sort of indication of where the gesture or the line or the brush stroke is going. So that's the second layer, which is behind this grid here. And then I've gone across the entire surface with this more gestural structure, first horizontally and then vertically, and they've been done quite quickly, and in comparison to these other forms, there's no tape or defined area. I've just gone across the entire surface. Then I have gone in with these corner anchors to connect the central white form to the outer edge of the canvas. So the black squares have gone in, and that's 2 layers of black acrylic paint straight out of the tube. 2 just to create density, but also to make sure that there aren't any areas that have been missed out on the surface. And then finally I've then created these sort of wings or anchor points to reference both the vertical and the horizontal. And this is a matte medium glaze, so instead of using the gloss surface, it's matte. So in the raking light, there's a distinction between this and this, which sort of fragments or allows one section to recede, which is the outer edge, and the central part of the painting to come forward. So I've done, again, a horizontal and a vertical, where I'm applying the paint to the canvas and then removing it with the dry brush. So you can see both the vertical and horizontal brush strokes. And that's sort of a reference to the canvas, the white meaning referring to the gesso, but also the linear line of the brush stroke references the warp and weft of the canvas. And then that's sort of amplified again through this sort of central gesture or intersecting of lines. So that's the how I've constructed the painting in terms of its layers and the construction of composition, and the way that I've mixed the paint and applied the paint. So some of the things that I think about when I think about painting are the differences between gestural painting and geometry. So often when looking at my paintings, there's both the geometry and the gesture operating simultaneously on the one picture plane, and that's often in opposition. But what's most exciting is when the two work simultaneously or within a balance of one another. And when we talk about painting or abstract painting, often we're either talking about gestural expressionistic painting, or we're talking about hard edge modernist painting. But my paintings tend to operate somewhere in between. So it's really important that there's a balance between the two. Another thing that I think about is the influences. So the landscape versus the architectural, which again is the difference between the gestural and the hard edge. I also think about the masculine and the feminine. So abstraction comes out of a very masculine history, as does painting, but more specifically abstraction. And I think it's really interesting when we look at a painting to ask ourselves if the painting is masculine or feminine, and whether or not a painting can be one or the other, or can they operate somewhere in the middle.